Up, everybody? It's TJ McKinley Podcast, episode 39. We say what we want, period. I got my boy on, just like go be his third time. Go ahead and introduce yourself, Kyle.
So yeah, I'm Kyle Senra, with content creator with Fantasy Six Pack, going for two, as well as the league winners. And I guess my work with the league winners really ties into what I'm doing here today because for them, I mostly just write Packers articles. I am a Green Bay Packers fan. My grandfather was a Green Bay Packers fan, so tradition passed on and will continue. But just because I'm a fan of the team doesn't mean I love everything they do. So sure, all sports fans, really, not just NFL fans, all sports fans can feel that sometimes.
Well, as y'all know, Kyle obviously a Packers fan. He got the hat on representing. So, Kyle, I know you said a little bit about it, but this basically gonna be your ether segment. What you all like? Let's start. Who's the first pick that the Packers drafted? Go ahead.
Topically, like one of the things recently is the brotherly push or the tush shove or whatever it's called. I don't really care, but I care even less about the fact that the Packers decided to pass a motion to try and ban the play,
Mm,
citing potential of injury. Which it's football. Let's be real. If you're banning any play because of potential of injury, you're not playing the sport anymore. So, but it's such a stupid reasoning to try and justify it. Really backhandedly and backwardsly. And, they're the ones that proposed it. So they had to spend time researching and writing this proposal. Feels like such wasted effort. It didn't get passed, thankfully. I'm
mm,
objectively as an NFL fan, I don't see any reason why it should be banned because I think that they've shown when the Eagles have run it, there's been zero injuries. I think some other team, I think the Giants tried to run it once and someone got hurt because they're just so awful at doing it. So, if you're bad at anything, there's a chance to get hurt. But as the Eagles have shown, there's actually less chance of being injured in that play than most other plays. And I know Dr. Ethan Turner, who's a physical therapist, he did a study and it showed quarterbacks were more prone to getting injured and missing times on hits from the pocket than they were on designed rushing attempts. So just from the quarterback perspective alone, it's actually easier to protect them when you're running. And I think it with the what the Eagles do, it's such short distance that other players aren't getting time to build up speed and really hit someone very hard. It's
yeah.
dangerous for a quarterback just to stand in the pocket, and you've got guys coming at you all directions. When they're rushing, they've got the blockers in front of them. They know where they're going to be running to. They have a good idea of where those points of contact are going to happen. You can predict that a lot more easily and avoid them more easily. When you're just standing there in the pocket, it's the Wild West, and those hits can come from any direction, and that's where more injuries happen because the quarterbacks aren't ready for those hits. Anyway, so yeah, so I think just from the Packers' perspective, I think it was so stupid just waste time trying to write this proposal. They could have been doing a million other things to try and get the team better. They barely did anything in free agency. Their biggest move was to sign guard Aaron Banks from the 49ers. And I really don't like this move. So for the Packers, it's all about the starting five. Like they preach the position doesn't matter. Who are the five best offensive linemen? We're going to get them out there. And I mean, to be fair, this free agent signing of Aaron Banks speaks of that.
Mm.
The big problem I had with the Packers last year was Josh Myers at center. He was, this was the last year of his rookie contract, and through 4 years, really up and down. Sometimes he looks awful. Like sometimes he looks like the worst center in the league. The PFF grades last year kind of put him there. There are other times he looks passable and okay, but he never looks great. So my first thought was, okay, the center position probably needs to be upgraded. The Packers think they've done that by signing Aaron Banks, and they're going to move Elton Jenkins from left guard to center. It seems like that's what the plan is. Elton Jenkins has been incredible. I don't think he actually has any All Pros, although I think he's been robbed and he's played at what I consider to be an All Pro level. Maybe I'm a Packers fan, I'm biased. I just think Quentin Nelson has gotten All Pro nods over reputation and not actual play. Like I think he's pretty overrated. So like
Mm.
I rightfully like I think it's wrong that he's gotten some of those All Pro wins and Jenkins hasn't. But anyway, I just think Jenkins is that good of a guard, and Elton Jenkins' whole his whole stick is that he's literally played all five positions on the offensive line before. The Packers have had him at left tackle in emergencies, not the ideal situation. There was a season where he played right tackle. He got hurt in that season, but those 7-8 weeks where he was right tackle, he actually looked great. He's been outstanding at left guard, so I think he'll play well at center. But my concern now is I don't think Aaron Banks is as good of a guard as Jenkins. So while you're upgrading the center position, you're actually probably downgrading your guard position by spending a ton of money on a guard. Like just that philosophy doesn't make sense to me. You've invested all this money at guard, and yet the guard play is probably not going to be as good as last year. Where the Packers should have done is signed, I think Drew Dalman was the highest paid center this year. He made a lot less than Aaron Banks. So you could have gone over what the Bears spent on Drew Dalman, got a natural center, just plugged him in at center, kept Jenkins at guard where he dominates, and you would have spent less money on Banks to the point where you could have maybe signed another player. Instead, they have this whole complicated thing of moving Jenkins and just to sign Aaron Banks. And I think he's good. I think he's okay, but I don't think he's great. Not enough to 4 years, 77 million or something. Like they really overspent. They could have spent less on a center. Maybe he's not as good. Dahlman to Banks, you'd say Banks is better. But I still think Dahlman would have been an upgrade on center last year. It would have been good enough to where the cost justifies it, I think. And then you would have stopped the Bears from solidifying their center. So it not only did you kind of mess up your offensive line a little bit, but you by not signing Drew Dalman, you let the Bears get him. And so you've made this division rival who offensive line has been a huge struggle for them. They might have figured it out this offseason. So kudos to the Bears because I think what they've done with their offensive line signings was a lot smarter than what the Packers did. The only move the Packers made in free agency that I think could work is signing Nate Hobbs. He's a cornerback for the Raiders, or he had been for the Raiders. Now he's on the Packers. Most of his time with Vegas, he's been a slot corner. The Packers have an overabundance of players that they can play in that nickel corner. They've got Javon Bullard, who they used a lot last year. And in theory, they could use Evan Williams, but he's a safety. They like keeping him as that strong safety. Keyshawn Nixon, he's their star returner, but he also has played nickel corner a lot. So between Bullard and Nixon, like you've got options there already. They really need an outside corner. And so if Hobbs can make that transition to be a perimeter corner and do it really well, then this signing actually makes sense. And it's probably my favorite move for the Packers offseason. But there's still there's still a bit of guesswork there because if he can't play on the outside well, then it feels like that's also wasted money. So I really didn't like what the Packers did in free agency. And the one move I did like, there's still tremendous risk with it. So even before the draft started, I was already like, man, this offseason has not gone well. I do not like what Brian Gutekunst, the GM, has done so far.
No, that was a lot. Oh yeah, go ahead and drink your own water, bro. Oh, let's go ahead and start with these draft picks. The ones you don't like. The first one y'all took was Matthew Golden, a wide receiver out of Texas. Just like the first wide receiver since Aaron Rodgers days, the early Aaron Rodgers days, where y'all picked up wide receiver in the first round. That's what I'm reading. I don't know if it's true or not. So what you feel
I
about
think
him? You feel
it's
like he gonna be like a Jordy Nelson, or a Adams, what, or he just gonna be there?
well, I think it dates back to even before Rodgers. I think the last time they took a first round receiver, Brett Favre was still the quarterback, and I think it happened before Rodgers draft in 2005. It was something like 2003, 2004. So this actually even dates further than the Aaron Rodgers.
Mm.
But I mean, if Matthew Golden becomes Jordy Nelson or Devontae Adams, and I'm completely wrong about him, that'd be amazing. I would love nothing more than to be totally wrong on Matthew Golden, but I definitely do not see that. As a Packers fan, all those years, everyone's complaining, oh, Aaron Rodgers has thrown to one first round receiver his whole career, and it was Mercedes Lewis who was taken, I think, the same first round as Aaron Rodgers by the Jaguars, and they eventually signed him, and Rodgers threw a touchdown to him one year or something, and that counts as the first round receiver. That's what everyone complained about, but I always felt if they get Jordy Nelson in the second round, Devontae Adams in the second round, Randall Cobb was a second rounder. Pretty sure Greg Jennings, before Aaron Rodgers got there, he was a second rounder. And recently, Christian Watson has dealt with the injuries, but when he's on the field, he plays well. But Jaden Reed, I think they nailed that second round pick. Like this, and that's two different GMs. That's Ted Thompson. That's now Brian Gutekunst, who's been GM since I think 2017. They've got this system where they can really identify these second round receivers and develop them well to the point where they're outproducing first round receivers. So why take a first round receiver? Instead, their best first round picks all through the Aaron Rodgers era, Clay Matthews, Jair Alexander, Kenny Clark, they are drafting these elite defensive players in the first round and turning them to franchise cornerstones.
Mm-hmm.
And they got lucky last year signing Xavier McKinney in free agency, who I think instantly was the team MVP. That's not going to happen every year. You don't get a Xavier McKinney or even to a bigger extent a Charles Woodson every year. They've managed to do it once in a while, but you can't rely on that. Those elite defensive talents to add to the defense, you get them in the first round. You might get lucky in with a later pick, but typically I've been someone where it doesn't matter which position on the defense, but take the best overall defensive player every year in the first round, and you're probably going to be set up pretty well in the long term. So just from that perspective, I didn't like taking Matthew Golden in the first round. Now, you tell me you've got to take a wide receiver in the first round. I can understand. Man, if Tetaroa McMillan had fallen, okay, sure. I love that pick. I think he's an incredible player.
Mm-hmm.
Matthew Golden, he strikes me as this type of. I know why they drafted him. It's because he ran a 4.29 40-yard dash at the combine. And based on his reaction, he didn't run a second time. He seemed like he was shocked he ran that fast. So I've heard some rumors and conspiracy theories that that was actually missed time, and it was still impressive, but like a 4.33, like it wasn't sub 4.3. It probably shouldn't have been. But we've seen this history of just these incredibly fast receivers that are only drafted because they're fast, not working out. We saw last year Xavier Worthy buck the trend, but not really buck the trend. He was a 4.22. He broke the record, fastest 40 ever. Xavier Worthy had an incredible production profile in college. He broke out as an 18-year-old, and what we typically say with breakout, especially from a fantasy football or dynasty fantasy football perspective, is 20% dominator rating. And dominator rating equates to the percentage of teams' yards and touchdowns. So if you can ever get at any point in college career 20% of your team's yards and touchdowns, you're considered to have broken out and taken that step to be a great player. Most guys aren't breaking out at age 18. As a true freshman, I believe with Texas, he came out and was achieving those types of stats and continued really good progression throughout his career. Matthew Golden, I mean, his breakout happened at age 20, but his overall career dominator rating for his entire career in college was 18.4%. So technically, if you look at his college career, he didn't even hit that 20% as an average throughout the course of his career. He had individual seasons where he hit that 20% of teams' yards and touchdowns. But for the most of his average career is 18.4. If I'm looking at, I'll just say it, the guy I wanted them to take at wide receiver would have been Luther Burden. If you look at Luther Burden, he like Xavier Worthy is an 18-year-old breakout. He was a true freshman, I think, with Missouri. And these guys that produce as 18-year-olds in college, that's something incredibly special because they are playing against a lot of 20, 22-year-olds. So to shine as an 18-year-old, that's a great indicator of future success. So I really like Burden from that. Golden broke out at 20, which isn't horrible, but it's nothing outstanding. Burden's whole career, his dominator rating average was 37.1%. And again, Golden's at 18.4. He's almost doubling him up in terms of percentage of teams' touchdowns and yards. The other stat that I really like, and I use this both for college and NFL, yards per team play and receiving yards per team pass attempt. And I think that gives a really good indicator of a receiver's role on a team and also importance to a team. Burden smashes Golden's stats, frankly. I mean, his yards per team play is at 1.9 for his career. Golden's at 1.4. Not a huge difference, but the receiving yards per team pass attempt. So I think that what that indicates is that the Missouri, I think it was Missouri with Burden was at, they just didn't throw very much. So no receiver is going to account for the totality of their yards per play because most of that's going to the running backs. Mm-hmm. But if you look at just receiving yards per team pass attempt, just looking at the pass attempt and seeing what's a receiver's role in their pass catching offense, Burden's single season best year of receiving yards per team pass attempt was 3.21, which is elite for this class. Like we're talking, Marvin Harrison was kind of in that same range, and people talk about him as like one of the greatest college receiver prospects ever. I think Neighbors was just over 3. Like Tetaroa McMillan in this class, his single season best is 3.02. So a 3.21, that's incredibly impressive. Truly elite numbers from Luther Burden. I think he did that as a 19-year-old as well. So that just kind of insane. And last year was a dip in production. Matthew Golden's best season is 1.82. And I've got how many receivers ranked? I think I've got 33 wide receivers ranked, and this is for fantasy football dynasty purposes. But if I'm looking through those 33 receivers, I'm seeing, 7 guys that have a lower receiving yards per team pass attempt. Like if I'm judging this class, Matt Golden's in that stat line, his single season best receiving yards per team pass attempt, he's like 26, 27, 28th in the class. Like just truly an awful production profile. Not what Xavier Worthy was last year. This looks more like John Ross. You remember John Ross, all the hype on that, the breaking the 40 record. Let's take him in the first round, even though the production through college really wasn't there. I think his last year he did pretty good, but for most of his career he wasn't that good. I
All right,
mean, Matthew
let me
Golden,
ask you. Let me ask you about the next pick.
yeah.
The next pick. Anthony Belton, the offensive tackle at NC State. You know the Packers have always had, I'll say, stacked O line for the most part. Even though Aaron Rodgers be running like he Vic, but anyway, y'all pretty much have pretty stacked offensive line. So you feel like Anthony, what's his name, Belton, about to be the
Yeah.
next generation, or he just a safe pick for the O line?
This seems like a very I don't even know if it's a safe pick because it seems like he needs a lot of technical work. Like he hasn't shown that he's like necessarily ready to be a an everyday starter on offense. But I think
Mm.
the Packers and Gutekunst again, he really likes the athleticism. That's why he took Golden with the fast 40. Ah, forget the production. He's just super fast. We're taking him. And that's why I'm really scared of that pick. Beltran feels similar to that. He's really fast, really strong, but he needs a lot of technical refinement. So I think he's got potential to be an impact starter, but they can't throw him in right away.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they have last year, and they took an offensive tackle in the first round, and he actually ended up missing most of the season due to injury. And the times he got on the field, he played guard mostly. So I think maybe that's Belton's like path almost. You like because of all the technical refinement, you if he needs to start, you don't want to throw him out at tackle right away. Like that would be something where you'd move Elton Jenkins out to tackle and find another center and get Belton as an interior guy to start because he's got the good athletic traits to maybe be a really good run blocker. But I think there's concerns about how good he's going to be in pass pro. And I think so it's a risky pick. So I don't think it's a safe pick at all. But I can understand it taking the high risk shot in the second round, I suppose. Again, I really don't like taking the high risk shot in the first round when there's more certainty. So I understand the pick. I still don't love it though. But I like it better than the Matthew Golden pick, I'll say.
All right, what you feel about another receiver? I feel like the Packers are trying to buff up the wide receiver room for Jordan Love. That's what it looked like, in my opinion. Savion Williams out of TCU, so that's two Texas boys. Even though they probably not from Texas, two Texas boys y'all drafted. What you feel about Savion Williams?
Well, TCU receivers are that's almost always a bad bet to make just off that alone. Now, the good news is Savion Williams might not even be a wide receiver, which is pretty good news for him and the Packers because he's another one of those guys where the production profile was awful. I mean, like I thought Golden's production profile was bad. Savion Williams is horrendous. 14.3% dominator. He never broke out, so at no point in his career did he ever account for 20% of his team's receiving yards or touchdowns. His yards per team play for his whole career is less than 1 yard. It's point zero 0.08 or sorry, zero point 0.8 yards. His single season best receiving yards per team pass attempt is 1.25. Just completely atrocious. Like I will be shocked if this guy is a good receiver. And I don't even think it's a surprise that immediately after he was drafted, the Packers are already talking about, oh, we want to, get him in the backfield and use him in this way, use him in that way. And it's typically these players where you're instantly talking, you've drafted them, and your first plan is we don't really know where to play him. We just want to play him all over the place. That tells me he's not good at any position. And you're almost trying to justify taking the pick like immediately after making it. Like this,
Mhm.
I think this is almost even worse than the Matthew Golden pick because I can see the scenario. I think one thing Matthew Golden did is the college football playoffs last year. He started to break out and he really showed maybe the best he's ever shown. So you got this like 4 game sample size of really productive career versus the rest of his career that's not productive. But that sample size happened at the end. Did he develop? Did he make a turn? Like, is that maybe how he's gotten faster and got that combine speed? So I can see where Golden's improved enough that you think he can continue to improve and eventually be a part of this offense. I don't understand this pick at all. Like I think he's awful. And the way they're talking about him, if they think he's awful too, because they seem to struggle to think that he's ever going to be a significant receiver to the team. Like he's going to be like this gadget player. Like why are you taking that in the third round? So uh, then I remember Brian Gutekunst. I don't know if I've ever come on the show and ranted about Packers third round picks, but Brian Gutekunst has been horrendous at drafting in the third round. The worst one is 2021, where they took Amari Rogers in the third round and let Amon-Ra St. Brown fall to the Lions at the start of the fourth round. Amari Rogers didn't even make it through year two with the Packers. They cut him halfway through his second year, and he barely ever caught passes because he can't really catch. He's kind of fast, and so they essentially drafted him in the third round to be their kick returner. He was awful on kick returns. He kept fumbling all the time, so they eventually just got fed up and cut him. And the Texans signed him, and he might even be out of the league now. They could have just drafted Amon-Ra St. Brown and got a way better receiver. That's almost what strikes me here with Williams, because I thought there were better pure wide receivers available than Savion Williams. There's so many good ones, to be honest. You can probably go 30 wide receivers deep before you get one with a production profile as bad as Savion Williams. But frankly, the Packers just keep missing in the third round. They've got two third round picks that have been success since 2017 when Gutekunst took over. Tucker Kraft at tight end. He's really developed, and that was again another player that was taken because of the athletic traits. But maybe at tight end, that's the position you want to really look for the athletic traits. There's so few schools in college that actually use the tight end properly. So to me, I don't look at production for tight ends in college like I do at wide receivers. I think for wide receivers, there's so many spread offenses in college. Teams sometimes play four wide receivers. Like, it's so easy for a receiver to get on the field and produce in college that those that don't, that's a massive red flag. Tight ends, I don't view it as badly, because you could have an amazing tight end on a team that just doesn't throw to the tight end. No idea. This coach has no idea how to use them. The quarterback has no interest in targeting the tight end. So that is a position where you do look for traits more. So they nailed that pick. Like Tucker Kraft, you've gotten he was a starting tight end all last year. For a third round pick, you're pretty happy with that. Starting right guard last year was Sean Ryan, also a third round pick. So they've made those two third round picks, but they've completely whiffed basically at every other third round pick. And I think this is just another year where it's happened. Last year it was Marshawn Lloyd at running back, and some linebacker who never even contributed on the team, and there were so many red flags. It was so stupid to take. And so I might even hate the Williams pick more than the Matthew Golden pick.
All
I love the Packers.
Kyle really breaking these drafts down. We got another Texas boy, so that's three that y'all drafted. Dan Sorrell, edge rusher out of Texas. I don't know what the Packers defense look like. You do, so is this a need, or this was just like a whatever pick?
I would always argue edge rushers like the most important position on defense. Quarterback's the most important position in football. So what's the one thing that messes up quarterbacks is a good pass rush. So that's like the best defense to a quarterback is that pass rush. So arguably that's the second most important position is those edge rushers. So I think you can never have enough. You always want to add to your rotation. So from that perspective, I like the pick of Sorrell. It feels like he's almost the opposite of Belton in the second round, which I would argue offensive tackle is that next important position, right? Because if you think logically, okay, quarterback's the most important, rushing the quarterback's the next most important thing, which means protecting the quarterback should be that third most important position. And then, your pass catchers are important too. So from that perspective, Packers took 4 picks at wide receiver, offensive tackle, and edge rusher. Like, those are the positions in theory you want to be drafting early. And it's funny, he's almost the opposite of Belton, who they took in the second round. It seems like Sorrell is ready to contribute day one. He's got all the techniques, a bunch of different pass rush moves. He's good against the run and the pass, but his upside athletically seems limited. You could easily see him being a football player for a long career, but is he ever going to be a starter? Is he ever going to truly be a difference maker? And that's maybe the question there. But you're also talking fourth round. So frankly, this almost seems like the safest pick with the way teams use edge rusher rotation so much. It feels like he's going to contribute at some point, whether it's on special teams, but even on defense early, I could see that happening. It looks like, I looked at his college stats. He does seem to stack a lot of tackles for losses and sacks. Like, it seems like he's good at getting into the backfield. But because he's not really a plus athlete, is he going to be able to do that against NFL offensive linemen? And that's, I guess, where my concern is. But again, he's a fourth rounder. So honestly, up to this point in the draft, this is probably my favorite pick, but I still have questions about
Okay. But another, I guess, safe pick, as you would call it, another edge rusher y'all took was
it.
Colin Oliver, Oklahoma State. I don't know, it seemed like the Packers was really going for the Big 12 or at mix SEC conference. That's what it looked like. So what you
Yep.
feel about him? He another safe edge rusher or what?
I think he's not as well rounded as Sorrell, which makes sense. They take Sorrell around earlier. It seems like Oliver isn't as great as the run, and he seems like he's going to be a third down specialist only. Whereas you could let Sorrell out there on early downs, and it seems like he'd play well. It seems like Colin Oliver for now, he's a pass rush specialist and a special teamer. You don't really want him out there on early downs stopping the run. And it also seems like he's smaller than Sorrell, I'm pretty sure. So like Sorrell, you could see him because the Packers now run a 4-3 defense. So their primary edge rushers are going to be their defensive ends. It really feels like Colin Oliver, his body type profiles more as outside linebacker. And so you bring him in on these third down plays where you're going to be blitzing and you want your outside linebackers rushing. But there's a lot of plays where you don't want you want your outside linebackers either in coverage or against the run. And it seems like that's where he's very limited. So I think it's safe, like you said, in the sense that it's technically an edge rusher, but it's not as safe as Sorrell. I think he actually profiles more like Belton, where he needs more development before you can really trust him out there on defense. So I like the pick. At the fifth round, take a because if he hits and he's this elite pass rusher on third downs, that could be worth it in the fifth round. Like take the shots. I'm okay with it here. Just not okay with it in the first three rounds. That's all.
Do you feel like the Packers defense will get back to, I guess, glory days or Clay Matthews and Hawk and what was that corner y'all had? The
Well, we had Charles Woodson.
Woodson,
Yeah,
yeah, all
there
them.
was a Nick Collins at safety as well. Yeah, no,
Yeah,
it's it's there are pieces. I think the one thing they did last year was readjust the safeties. Like I mentioned, they had Xavier McKinney they brought in, drafted both Javon Bullard and Evan Williams. Those guys were day one starters on defense, so they've really changed that secondary. If Jair Alexander can get back to being like the best corner in the league, then perhaps. I mean, I think Rashawn Gary's a good edge rusher. I still think Kenny Clark's a dominant defensive tackle. He actually really struggled for a lot of last year, but the end of the season, he showed those flashes. It was the first year with the Jeff Hafley defense, so I do wonder if Clark maybe had more trouble adjusting to that. He used to play like a lot of nose tackle or sometimes defensive end in a 3-4 defense, but having to now play as a defensive tackle in a 4-3, it seemed like that was a little maybe awkward for him. Now that he's had a year to adjust, I expect Clark to get back to that. So maybe not quite the peak you saw in 2010, because as good as Xavier McKinney I don't think he's as good as Charles Woodson, and same with Jair Alexander. Like that's all-time great corner. But I think they can get pretty close to that. And maybe their sixth round pick might help them. To be honest, TJ, that was maybe my favorite pick of the draft they made in the sixth round. Don't you just love that with your team? Like, oh man, I love this draft because of the sixth rounder they made. That's usually probably not a good draft, but I think they got a really good value pick here. Warren Brinson, defensive tackle, and I think this has been one of the Packers' biggest position of needs since they got Kenny Clark. That other defensive tackle, the inside defensive line guys, they haven't had that second good one next to him either. Because like the part of the problem is if Clark is having so much success, teams will just double and triple team him with their offensive linemen, tight ends, running backs, whatever. And but there's no one else there to really take advantage of that and actually get success. So if Clark can win one-on-one matchups, that's great. But as soon as he does, teams add more attention to him. I've always felt they needed that second elite defensive lineman on the inside that'll prevent teams from just concentrating on Clark all the time. And I think the worst thing is whenever Clark's not on the field, because I mean, these defensive tackles, they're going to play 2/3 to 3/4 of the snaps max. And I think that's usually where Clark's been. They've like having him for about 2/3 of the snaps, anywhere around 70%. For those 30%, it's bad. The defense is awful. They get gashed constantly.
all right. I'm gonna go ahead and